we know if that's an issue. And in fact, with the data that can be analyzed, we can help that agent during that conversation make sure that they optimize the response to the customer. And this is what I mean by making sure that every interaction you have with your customers not only responds to whatever the issue is, but delights them. That makes them feel like that interaction added value to the relationship they have with CAT Communications. So how are we seeing this impact enterprises? As you know, IBM works with all different industries. And with every one of these industries, what we're doing now is infusing Watson into the key applications. So in government, creating all kinds of services that can help serve citizens. In fact, unfortunately, with COVID, we've worked with governments all over the world to implement response systems that help them help their citizens understand what they should and could be doing. In learning, now that we've moved to a digital world, we're doing distance learning education and services. In manufacturing, everything from looking to make sure that employees returning to manufacturing plants now stay in safety zones, to watching to make sure everything that gets produced in real time is as precise as it should be. Hundreds, if not thousands, of IoT sensors, video cameras on the shop floor, providing the ability to implement edge-based solutions that provide insights in real time. Medical, distance, the ability to use distance medical services, and even to do robotic surgery. We're now with a dedicated network bandwidth when slicing becomes available with 5G. That doctor can now be located anywhere. In media and entertainment, in retail, optimizing the shopping experience. And of course, in banking, we're working now, we've announced in IBM the first public cloud architecture in the world that meets regulatory and government requirements for banks. So when you think now of marrying 5G and edge capabilities in that environment, we can put that public cloud and help create the retail bank of the future. Let me give you an example of the Vodafone opportunity that I mentioned. This is an example where, frankly, this client, National Express, who runs a lot of the transportation in the UK, they probably would not have done business with IBM, and they probably would not have done business with Vodafone. But when we came to them with a unique value proposition of putting together our capabilities with Vodafone's capabilities, they saw the value. So together, we've been able to open up a new market where the network capabilities, the security capabilities that we can infuse, and then the application and integration expertise that we can bring together are allowing them to address new clients. So let me talk a little bit about the network. Our view is this is an inevitable transformation. Just like we saw in the last generation of cloud, when video services abstracted from appliances and video became a service that could be deployed on scale-out IT infrastructure, the OTT providers took great advantage of it. Amazon, with massive media investments to now displace media companies and disintermediate them. Microsoft, with huge gaming and network investments in video to displace gamers and to integrate their Xbox end-to-end platform. Google, with YouTube, to take time and attention away from media companies and move it to their platform. In my view, we're seeing the same strategy play out now as it relates to network services. One of the very first examples of this is when WhatsApp was born, and it took away messaging units from the service providers and moved it onto an IP-based platform. That platform was born on the IBM cloud, just like many of the advanced mobile gaming platforms like Playdom, Zynga were born on the IBM cloud. Those offerings, and let me talk about WhatsApp as an example. When it was bought by Instagram and ultimately Facebook, continued to run on the IBM cloud until just this year. And it's an example, from my vantage point, of how services are going to evolve. So now when data, multimedia, and voice services abstract from hardwired appliances, they too can be deployed on a scale-out platform. And when they can be deployed on a scale-out platform, they can be infused with automation and intelligence. And that's why we want to align with you in creating this platform of the future for the core network, the RAN, radio access network, and the edge. And in fact, we believe having a consistent architecture, whether those are physically different domains or logically connected, will allow you to apply hyper automation to drive tremendous cost advantages compared to today's models. And we are already deploying these kinds of services around the world. So let me just give you an example of what we think the things that our clients are telling us, working with the biggest, most complex service providers around the world. They understand that this is a fundamental transformation from engineering, appliance architecture, to horizontal software architecture. That is going to take new skills, new design thinking and ways of working, and new approaches. Our approach has been to be completely aligned with the industry standard frameworks like the ETSI framework, because our objective quite clearly is to return architectural control to you so that you can pick the services that you can deploy, and you can pick the partners that will map to that open architecture, whether it's in the core, the RAN, or the edge. And we think with Red Hat, which has OpenStack deployed in 120 telcos around the world, and is the #1 contributor to the upstream community, now moving to OpenShift and a Kubernetes-based framework. Once again, the #1 contributor in this context with regards to telco innovation. And why is that important? Because the reality is 95% of the code in OpenShift has changed in the last year. And that rate of innovation and change is going to continue. So having a partner like Red Hat with an ecosystem that they can bring to help you, we believe is really powerful. And by the way, Red Hat still operates as an independent company in IBM. They will still have their complete ecosystem of partners they had, but now we have the opportunity to create even more value. And why is that important? Because as you move forward through this evolution, you will have the existing architecture in place for quite some time. So being able to support N-1, N-2, past generations of architecture, while you build and evolve the next generations of architecture, and to do that in a stable manner is going to be incredibly important. And then to infuse AI into that platform, Red Hat is using Ansible, and we're working very closely with them with a set of automation and assurance capabilities we built. IBM had a 50% market share in the assurance market 4 years ago. What I've done since then is I've completely rebuilt our solutions. So our NetCool platform is now called NOI. It has a new service assurance capability that's automated. And importantly, we've added a new lifecycle orchestration capability. You can pick any of the suppliers in the network you want, and we can cohesively help you orchestrate and manage one-button deployment and efficient management of this environment as it grows and scales. And as we push to the edge going forward, that automation is going to be critical for you to be able to both partner and bring direct value, partner with OTT providers, other cloud providers, customers, and add your own value on top of it. So we think this must be enterprise class. It must be secure across the environment, and it must allow you to build new enterprise solutions. And back to my point, we see an evolution of optimizing the platform, partnering together on the kinds of B2B use cases we can bring, and then creating new capability and implementing what Christine's going to talk to you about next, but a cohesive data fabric that will allow you to exploit data that you have inside your enterprise and that you get in partnership with your clients in a way that follows all regulatory requirements. So finally, we think you're going to want to leverage the best infrastructure, the best cloud for the best job or workloads. So having the flexibility with a common virtualization platform to move workloads wherever you need to move them is going to be a critical advantage. So this is the ETSI framework that we're working on. IBM is not going to build network functions either in a virtualized world or in a container world. We are going to partner with the ecosystem. We're going to partner with the other players that you have inside your enterprise that we have to do. But we're going to continue to invest in creating the world's best management and virtualization capabilities so that you control the architecture and have the ability to deploy services faster to create more value. So how do we see that happening? Over time, as 5G deploys, we think increase the latency, bandwidth, and network slicing, disadvantages. And in fact, you may have seen just today, we announced with Verizon in the US a partnership about bringing IoT users solutions to the marketplace for B2B services and leveraging our as a service portfolio that we already work in manufacturing 4.0 in a number of industries that bring those kinds of services. We want to bring together those emerging 5G attributes with these network cloud capability and the edge. I can see that there's
Vboard, is there an issue with the network?
So, Sunil. Steve, you're breaking up.
Steve, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having connection problems now.
It's good now, Steve.
Say again.
Seems your connection's been restored. It seems improved.
Can you hear me again now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me see if I can. Okay, can you see that chart okay?
That looks terrific, yes, and we can hear you very well.
Okay, I'm sorry, folks. My network connection got bad there for a second. I wanted to share with you just quickly. Here are some of the edge use cases that we're working with a number of customers around the world: food supply, hospitality, direct digital interfaces, manufacturing 4.0, remote operations, transportation, automation, education, healthcare. My team is more than willing to have a workshop with you about these use cases. And let me give you an example, because I know your focus on government is really important, of work we're doing now in a first responder use case. As you know, in California, and I know in Thailand, fires are happening every year. And our view is that if we think about the power of 5G and edge to connect together city, state, federal, private sector, that we could begin to create a platform with AI and automation that could create a set of services that could launch immediately. Drones in the air sending video down to analyze where the fire is and where it's going and everything that's in its path. Topology maps so that we know what the terrain is and how the fire is going to behave, all infused with AI models. Weather data from our weather company. We own the weather company, with real-time updates on heat, on wind patterns that can impact the analysis of how the fire is going to perform. IoT sensors on the terrain, on the amount of moisture. And then when the vehicles and equipment show up on the scene, instrumented, so they're continually placed in the most optimal way. And as an example of the ecosystem we want to create, a partnership we've already announced with Samsung, where the first responders could wear watches and other equipment that would measure their vital signs so that we know if they're in trouble or distress, or based on the models, whether they're about to be. All of this to get the fire out as soon as possible, to save lives and to save property. And when that fire is out, that edge platform can be turned down and those models can be taken to the next situation that they have to be used on. To me, that is the agility and the power of a platform approach to telecommunications. So the last thing I wanted to just highlight is, in thinking about these platforms, here are some examples of the kinds of use cases that we're doing already in the marketplace. I highlight here one of the ones we did with Bharti in India around Do Not Call. We're also doing work with SoftBank in the Asia region for out-of-market commerce. We're doing work on supply chain. We're doing work on trusted identity. So as we think about next generation platform services that could create more value for the CSPs above the transport layer, these are the kinds of offerings that we're working on. So just to summarize, our clients are telling us these are their three priorities. So we have decided to focus on those three and to build solutions that help you create a better digital experience across your channels, to help you automate the way you interface with your clients and offer personalized services, to help you modernize your business and your applications so that you can lower your cost of support and put less money to old applications and more money to new innovation, and to streamline your infrastructure architecture to take advantage of cloud architecture, but to do it in a way that allows you to control where you put those workloads. And importantly, with the network, to transform that into a horizontal platform that allows you to launch new services and to lower your costs of both deploying and managing that network. That's our strategy. My ask would be, we would very much like to continue this dialogue in any of these areas that you have interest around next generation networking, around B2B enterprise services and edge, and around digital transformation and providing value to your customers. I really hope that was helpful. I apologize for the network delay we had, but that's what I wanted to cover. And if there's any specific questions quickly, I could try to answer them. So let me stop sharing here. And turn it back to you, Sunil and team.
So, Dr. Kan, do you have any questions? Because Steve will need to leave in about 10 minutes. Dr. Kan มีคำถามอะไรไหมครับไม่ได้ยินเสียงครับมิวอยู่หรือเปล่าครับ
ไม่ทราบว่าท่านได้มีคำถามไหมคะสามารถอันมิวไมโครโฟนตรงด้านล่างได้เลยนะคะเพื่อถามคำถามหรือว่าจะส่งคำถามของท่านผ่านทางแชทบ็อกซ์ก็ได้ค่ะ
มันจะมีปุ่ม unmute อยู่นะครับดร.
โทษนะครับได้ยินไหมครับ
ได้ยินแล้วครับ
เดี๋ยวให้ลองการพูดก่อนครับ
ผมดร.กันยังไม่ได้ยินนะครับ
เดี๋ยวผมจะรบกวนขอกลับไปหน้าที่น่าจะหน้า13หรือเปล่าครับของสไลด์เพราะว่าเมื่อกี้นี้ตอนที่คุณสตีฟพรีเซนต์อยู่มันมี networking problem นะครับอยากให้อธิบายใหม่รอบหนึ่งหน้า13ตัว Telco Network Cloud Architecture ครับ
Hey Steve, can you go back to slide number 13 on the telecom network cloud architecture because the signal was breaking during that time.
Okay, let me try. Let's see. Can you see that?
Not yet.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. Okay. This one?
Yes.
Okay. This is the standard ETSI industry framework, open framework for next generation network architecture. And what we have mapped onto this framework are all of the IBM capabilities. So this is the Red Hat. You can see the Red Hat operating system and virtualization layer.
Right.
You can see the IBM orchestration capability. Mm-hmm. We believe we have a unique modern orchestration capability. It can orchestrate services from all the NEPs.
Okay.
And it can do it in an agnostic way. The problem that we see in today's architectures are that each of the NEPs try to orchestrate their deployment themselves. And so what happens is you end up with seams in your vertical seams in your network.
Mm-hmm.
And in the old world, that was okay. But in a world where you're going to have a lot of interactions between the edge, the RAN, and the core network,
mm-hmm.
the ability to orchestrate services independent of supplier and to have that automated from deployment to management, and to be able to integrate that with your service management architecture for fault detection, for predictive analytics, and for service management, we think is going to be really important. And the ability to predict the kind of network availability. Then when you add slicing capability with 5G to the network in the future, the number and complexity of deployments for those services are going to go up dramatically. So starting today and building an automation platform that will allow you to scale over time, we think is going to be critical, because the other players in the marketplace that are trying to extend their cloud platforms to the edge, so Amazon with Wavelength or Outpost, Google with Anthos, Microsoft or with Azure Stack, they each want to extend their control plane, and they want those enterprise applications to then be locked into their control plane. We believe if you insulate yourself from those control planes by using an open standard virtualization layer, and then being able to orchestrate independent of where you decide to run those workloads, allows you to control that optimization.
So my question is, let me introduce myself. I'm Sursit from the operation team, and I am familiar with the hardware resource and the virtualization layer, but not the upper layer in this diagram. I think it's the element management system layer.
Right.
I think, right? Could you explain a little bit more about the block on that level and the block above?
Yeah, so it's a very good question, and I would suggest that my operations team that works with your peers around the globe would be able to do a workshop with you and get into the detail.
Right.
But the point I would focus on for today is we're going through a series of evolutions on virtualization.
Okay.
And the first attempt 3-4 years ago was basically taking the black box of an appliance and lifting that onto scale-out hardware. And the NEPs controlled that black box. And in reality, you didn't have any visibility into how that was being virtualized. The next evolution was to begin to open that up, but to do it still in a silo that was tied to that single service provider. The point of evolution we have reached now is to think of it horizontally. And that's why this layer becomes important. Think of it as the virtualization layer is the foundation. The services run on that foundation, and then they get orchestrated, and the service management sits above those services. And this allows you then to plug and play different services over time. So if someone has the best EPC today, you can deploy it. If somebody else comes along with the best EPC or IMS in the future, you can deploy that. And not only can you deploy it, you can deploy it where you want in your network architecture, so that you have control over how you evolve your network services.
Okay.
But I will offer you, if you want, for my operations team to take you through the detail.
Thank you so much.
So I know I've used my time. If there's follow-up later, I'd be happy to follow up. Let me leave you with one final thought. My commitment is to work with you to enable you to deploy a platform that allows you to succeed in a highly competitive marketplace, and to build a platform that can achieve the same kinds of total cost of ownership that the hyperscale competitors are deploying on the back of their global platforms. So we are a global scale cloud provider. With Red Hat, we now have the world's biggest open source ecosystem, and we can bring that value to you, but bring it to you in a way where you control your architecture and the kinds of services. And then where we bring additional value is we have been defining the enterprise architectures of businesses for 100 years, manufacturers, banks, governments. And as those architectures inside those businesses take advantage of these new services, we can partner together to help you create value. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Steve, for having us today. So before you go, let's take a couple of pictures together with Kat and other speakers as well. Everyone, I would need your help to please turn on your camera by clicking the second button from the left-hand side in the toolbar below. Let's take a pictures together. ทุกท่านค่ะในลำดับถัดไปจะเป็นการถ่ายภาพร่วมกันนะคะเดี๋ยวยังไงรบกวนทุกท่านช่วยเปิดกล้องนิดนึงค่ะปุ่มเปิดปิดกล้องเนี่ยจะอยู่บริเวณทูบาร์ด้านล่างเป็นปุ่มที่2นับจากทางซ้ายมือนะคะ
พร้อมนะคะ1 2 3เรียบร้อยค่ะขอบคุณค่ะ
Okay, we're done. Thank you very much, Steve. Glad to have you with us today.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
ค่ะแล้วเพื่อไม่ให้เป็นการเสียเวลานะคะเดี๋ยวเราจะมีอะไรจะ
เพิ่มเติมไหมครับ
ถ้าเมื่อกี้ไมค์ผมใช้ไม่ได้นี่ผมเข้าทางมือถือแหละก็โอเคในคอนเซปต์นะฮะก็เดี๋ยวมา follow up กับทีมต่อแล้วกันในเรื่องโมดูลต่างๆนะฮะ
ได้ครับได้โอเคได้ครับ
ค่ะงั้นเดี๋ยวเรามาต่อกันในเซสชั่นถัดไปกันเลยนะคะคุณบีบุญเชิญค่ะ
โอเคขอบคุณครับเซสชั่นถัดไปก็จะเป็นของคริสตินนะครับซึ่งก็เป็น IBM Global Industry Solution Executive ในธุรกิจของเทเลคอมนะครับซึ่งความเชี่ยวชาญพิเศษของคริสตินคือในเรื่องของ Data Architecture นะครับเรื่องของ Analytics และก็ AI นะครับคริสตินได้ทำงานร่วมกับ IBM Research Lab มามากกว่า20 ปีนะครับโดยที่เน้นในเรื่องของ Next Generation Solution ที่จะตอบโจทย์ความต้องการของธุรกิจเทเลคอมนะครับซึ่งหัวข้อที่คริสตินจะมาพูดถึงในวันนี้นะครับก็คือทำยังไงที่จากเดิมในยุคก่อนหน้านี้ธุรกิจของโทรคมนาคมจะให้บริการด้านโทรคมนาคมแล้วก็ขาย Data นะครับแต่ว่าจากนี้ไปทำไมที่จะเป็นการเอา Data มาประมวลผลให้เป็น Insight นะครับหรือว่าข้อมูลเชิงลึกแล้วก็ขายเป็น Service ให้กับลูกค้าองค์กรนะครับหรืออย่างที่เราเรียกกันว่าเรื่องของ Data Monetization นะครับแล้วก็จะพูดถึงเรื่องของ asset management resource management ว่าในยุคจากนี้ไปเนี่ยจะทำยังไงที่จะลดต้นทุนให้กับองค์กรต่างๆโดยเฉพาะในช่วงของหลังโควิดนะครับเดี๋ยวคริสตินจะใช้เวลาประมาณสักครึ่งชั่วโมงเข้ามาตรงนี้นะครับ so Christine over to you please
Oh, thank you very much for the introduction. Good morning. And let me start by saying Kapkun Ka. I want to thank you for inviting me here today to share some of IBM's perspective and experience in AI and telecom. Let's see. I want to begin by first addressing the CAT telecom business specifically, the move to providing vital infrastructure, the cloud platform and services that support public service and private enterprises. This is both extremely vital for Thailand and also very good business. around the world, IBM is seeing a shift to platform, or sometimes we say ecosystem-based economies or business models, and that's true in all industries. For telecom and specifically, this means moving from an old business model of simply providing those services and sometimes also selling data to leveraging that core infrastructure to become the central facilitator of a new type
ที่เป็นส้มๆอ่ะมันเห็นชื่อป่ะอ๋อเห็น
of a new type of commerce.
ว่านี่เป็นมากที่เราต้อง
Did we have a question? So this new type of commerce is one that's built upon data and insights, and it's made feasible by open, secure architecture that enables the collection and discovery of different data elements wherever they live, the analytics and AI that provide those high-value insights in a trustworthy and reliable manner, and the governance capabilities that expose the data in ways that are tightly managed, but also accessible for business at business speed. I want to spend just a minute to level set the changing value proposition of a platform model, and I want to compare it to the traditional models. So on the left here, traditional models, the value chain was built, value, and managed transactions in a completely linear way. When we think about ecosystems with the new data analytics and platform capabilities, the new data opportunities created by 5G and Edge, an ecosystem model emerges. And this is where data value is created by managed interactions, not just transactions. And shared data creates value that compounds itself by participation from multiple sources. I think Steve referred to that as a virtuous cycle of innovation. That's what we're looking for. He referred to the business partnership with National and with Vodafone, and how together there was a different type of value than anybody would have had in uniquely, individually. So this is the platform play. Then is the role of being the convener within that data exchange to add value to the data from multiple players, to combine the data, to bring insights to it from multiple players safely and securely, and while also managing the concerns of trust, privacy, and accuracy. It's worth spending a moment too to look at where we've come from and how this has kind of evolved, to look at the changes in the way we interpret. And I'm getting some feedback. I'm wondering if we could manage that.
น้องพิมพ์สามารถมิวได้ไหมครับ
มิวเรียบร้อยค่ะ
not yet.
Okay, so let's look at the way. So on the left, first we were just looking at the data that we could get from telecom data. I'm not sure I can compete with the extra
กาวร้อนได้พอได้อยู่
dialogue.
Mute, Christine, sorry.
ไม่ก็ถามนี่ใครอยากเอาไปใช้บ้างไง
I think you need to do the muting yourself.
ดูตามผนังอะไรอย่างเงี้ยแล้วก็เอาคัตเตอร์กรีด300ก็ถึงถามนี่ครับมีใครหารไปซื้อมาใช้ไหมอุดรูอุดอะไรเงี้ย
I believe the host has the ability to take care of that, please.
Yeah, and Pinter is trying to do it.
Yes, I've muted everyone already.
Okay, thank you. So what I have on the left is the original data set that we were working with when we were first working with telecom data. And this was mostly where we were selling data to third parties. We would take a look primarily at CDR data and be able to make all different types of interpretations that could then be sold to third parties. And Then on the other side, I've got the enterprise services. And at first, the enterprise services were just about providing connectivity. That was the B2B model. Over time, we began to offer enterprise services to these end users and these enterprises, these businesses, and combining the two. So telecom data, so location data, being able to understand, for example, from the IMSI, the country code within the IMSI of a CDR, when somebody is from another country, when they've entered the country and started using their phone, how long they've stayed, how often they visit, and then being able to tie that to tourism data, for example, where you're looking at specific points of interest. And so what you've got then is you've got, these other data sources like weather and social media combined with the enterprise data, combined with the telecom data, and you've got some really rich types of offerings and capabilities that show up there. For example, combining location data with transit system data in Istanbul has helped city planners plan new routes to avoid gridlock, and to even in real time send additional buses or book additional taxis, make real-time adjustment capabilities based on events and weather, and sometimes transit shutdowns. In Jakarta, adding social media data has helped be able to detect flooding. And in New York State, they're using analytics and weather data and the mobility data from the public utilities to determine where to locate snow removal trucks. In Europe, we see where event management informs city event organizers and local police about crowd and vehicle density at different locations in the city. And it's the main entries to the city. And we get to see tourism patterns, how long people visit a place of interest, how long they stay. And I'm imagining, too, that in the response to COVID, it would be very easy to report what countries people are from and maybe some hotspot countries and where they've gone during their visit for additional monitoring. In each of these, the telecom provider is also beginning to work with more and more data from the enterprises they serve in order to return higher value insights from their analytics. So again, this is that virtuous cycle where by providing value, we're working with more data, and then we have more data to work with from many different sources. So it becomes a natural next step to move into the platform business. And Steve talked a bit about the AT&T and the Vodafone environments where we've got the design innovation labs that are underway that are cranking out dozens of innovations constantly. The watches that Steve mentioned on workers, where you're taking vital signs with Samsung and AT&T. That oil and gas client, or there was one oil and gas client that reported that their injuries related to fatigue and falls were down by 86%, and that's a phenomenal human impact as well as cost impact. At Orange, we have what we're calling together a digital factory, and we're churning out again using the garage method, the design thinking methods, tons of apps and services, and in one case, with their acquisition of Orange Bank or the merger with, it's got incredible adoption of their mobile apps. And then, Reliance in India serving medical, industrial, and logistics segments with newfound insights from IoT data. It's just remarkable. I did want to point out in the lower right-hand corner, in Spain, using this type of model, we saw a 90% reduction in cost for mobile-enabled smarter cities client service. So it's all made possible because of the data platform. And I'm going to start from the bottom and move up. We leverage all cloud infrastructures with our multi-cloud approach, no vendor lock-in. Red Hat OpenShift, enterprise-ready, containerized way to move core business applications to any cloud, includes containerized IBM middleware and common software services for development. and management on top of a common integration layer. It is designed to reduce development time by up to 84% and operational expenses by up to 75%. Then we've got this platform interface layer. That's what we're calling a cloud pack for data. And it means a single user experience for data management, data governance, and analytics functions. And that's what we're talking about here. We like to say, you might have heard yesterday, if you attended Rob Thomas's presentation, there is no AI without IA, and that is what we're talking about with information architecture. And that IA, that ladder to AI, is represented by the functions of collect, organize, analyze, and infuse, and that's what's represented here in that platform interface layer. And I don't want to overlook the data virtualization capability here. This is what we're talking about when we're able to query across multiple data sources where the data lives without having to move the data. In fact, the query execution goes out, runs analytics where the data lives, and pulls back and extracts that piece of the data and does not need to transport the data back and forth. And we can get more into that, or as Steve has promised, we can have as many follow-ups as you like on that type of interface. And then finally, at the top, you see this services layer. Now we're showing some of our analytics services and templates, but we have 45 different analytics services and templates from IBM, from third parties. You see Lightbend is here. It's one of our very cherished partners, as well as our abilities in Postgres and so on. What that means in your environment is that you have data from all different areas of the business. You have network data, money, smart homes, call center logs, weather, industrial and IoT, enterprise, and of course, data from the cloud. And it means it can be discovered. It's not hiding. It's not, in that siloed, fragmented disarray that can be so hard to navigate. It can be discovered, collected, aggregated, and analyzed, then infused into the business to create value. When we're talking about this value, this is the value to the telecom business on the top here, the network, customer experience, the enterprise, as well as sentiment, but also all the enterprise services from the examples we discussed on the previous two charts. And we can now expose that data, those insights, and enable data-driven services to the public service entities and private enterprises in a governed and secure way. And these insights and interactions then lead to the next cycle of value creation. And this is, Steve and I did not work together on this, but this is my representation of the virtuous cycle of innovation that he was talking about. As we continue, and he mentioned this too, as we continue to bring insights to these enterprises and use their data, we can then take those insights back through and make even more value. And it's by creating that ecosystem and bringing that interaction and connectivity of data, not just connectivity of talk and service. And this is the value to the community, right? This is, and this is what makes me excited about the work. This value to the community happens because we're able to help data perform in a communal way, and that's really what we're able to do here. I want to talk quickly about the ways in which we can make these innovations happen at an accelerated clip. As Steve mentioned, many of these things, as you know, IBM works within all industries around the world. And because of that, we've developed software solutions that can be quickly and easily deployed for the most common types of problems that every business sees. And so one way that we've brought that to market is with the Watson IoT platform, collecting data from all different types of sensors and sectors, enabling all different types of innovation, whether it's related to workers or fleet, buildings and facilities. One of the things that we're able to do is bring down the cost of building management by what we call occupancy monitoring. So you don't need to have lighting, and maybe you can turn down the air conditioning when a building or a room is not occupied. And so that's one of the things that can be done. This also applies to agriculture. We're able to lower the cost of use of water in agricultural environments by being able to use sensors to know when irrigation needs to happen versus just watering on a specific schedule, whether it's rained or not. And the same is true for the use of pesticides. These insights can be valuable for many different types of businesses and organizations, and certainly what we're able to do then is enable you to provide that value to your enterprise customers. So whether you're working in public transport or with power and utilities, with fleet management, which is where many telcos like to begin their extension of enterprise services, because it's a natural fit to use the location data with the enterprise data to then begin to optimize what workers are sent where on what routes. But then these use cases can become more and more sophisticated with a greater detail of data as that enterprise relationship is enhanced. And then we have engines with decision optimization analytics that can help determine new routes and schedules based on inventory, weather, skill set of the resources of the drivers, the priority of the issue or the priority of the customer, perhaps, and any number of different criteria. And as Steve mentioned too, we've been deploying safe return to work solutions everywhere in the world, making sure that people we're doing temperature checks, we're doing congregation and crowd monitoring. We can also see if people are social distancing or if they're wearing masks, maybe they're congregating for too long rather than moving along. So able to help facilitate some of the safety and strength that we need in these times. And finally, we infuse the data and insights into solutions. Now, this often means automation or apps, and we're seeing this is a very important part of the work at Airtel and with all of our telco network cloud implementations when we're moving to a software-defined network and a network cloud environment. Being able to trigger actions based on analytics is a vital part of being able to manage a more and more complex networking system, especially with the addition of so many nodes. But here we have launched Watson Assistant citizens in many different languages all around the world. First answering just a specific set of COVID-related questions, and then for each deployment, expanding to be more specific to that entity or business, and really expanding the relationship that is built with that chat and that dialogue. And lastly, I want to leave you with one final thought as well, and that is that we recommend building from an idea or a need and designing a solution that is tailored to the situation and for the end users for best results. And this may sound obvious to many of you, but for years, so many of us, as we were designing solutions, were limited by data or our ability to access it or our ability to safely make it available. And those barriers have been removed to a great extent. And so back then we would look at the data and imagine what we could do with it with what we had. But now we can look at problems and imagine a world where there is something specific that is easier or healthier or just better. And we can then imagine all the ways that situation can be improved. And that's what our garage process and design thinking is about. And that's what launches our work toward making it happen. I am really looking forward to seeing all that the CAT team will do for Thailand. I thank you very much for having me. I will make this PDF available through the client team. It has other stories that you may find helpful, and I want to make sure that we have enough time to hear from Sunil tonight because he has a very important message around security. I would like to turn it back to the facilitators.
Okay, thank you, Christine. ไม่ทราบมีคำถามอะไรไหมครับ
ไม่มีครับ
Hey,
ทางผม
Christine.
นะครับ
Oh, you may be have okay. Hey, Christine, actually there was a question, but I'm not sure if we can help to cover because when Steve share about the use of blockchain technology for Airtel, so there was a question if you can explain on how it was used and how it was integrated into the telecom network of Airtel. I'm not sure if you can help to cover that or
I'm sorry, no.
No, all right. Okay. Then we'll ask Stephen to respond back on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Christine. เดี๋ยวในเซสชั่นถัดไปนะครับก็จะเป็นอันสุดท้ายนะครับซึ่งก็จะเป็นของซูนิลซึ่งเป็น Data Privacy แล้วก็เรื่องของ GDPR นะครับอันนี้เป็นเรื่องที่สำคัญแล้วก็ใกล้ตัวมากนะครับถึงแม้ว่าจะมีการเลื่อนเดดไลน์ของ PDP ออกไปจากเดือนพฤษภาคมที่ผ่านมานะครับแต่ผมเชื่อว่าอันนี้เป็นสิ่งที่ทุกคนต้องเตรียมความพร้อมกันเริ่มดูกันตั้งแต่วันนี้นะครับซูนิลเป็นผู้เชี่ยวชาญด้านของ Data Privacy เรื่องของ PDPA GDPR ใน Asia Pacific นะครับแล้วก็มีประสบการณ์โดยตรงนะครับทางด้านนี้มามากกว่า13ปีนะครับถึงแม้ว่าตำแหน่งของเขานี่จะดูแลส่วนที่เป็น Asia Pacific นะแต่ว่าความรู้และประสบการณ์ของเขาเนี่ยครอบคลุมไปถึงอินเดียแล้วก็ตะวันออกกลางด้วยนะครับแล้วก็นอกเหนือจากเรื่องของ Data Security แล้วซูนิลเองก็ยังมีความเชี่ยวชาญในเรื่องของ Governance Risk Compliance นะครับหรือว่า GRC เรื่องของ Business Continuity Plan Data Loss Prevention แล้วก็อีกหลายๆเรื่องอีกนะครับในเรื่องของ Security นะครับโอเค Sunil over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Vibhun, and good morning to everyone. In the next 30 minutes, I will be providing an overview about the Thailand data protection. What are the typical concerns and challenges what organizations face with respect to implementing data privacy within their organization? What organizations needs to do in order to address the risks related to data protection or data privacy, and how IBM can help CAT achieve compliance to the Thailand data protection requirements, and also how we can partner with CAT in order to provide services to your customers with respect to data privacy. So this, in general, will be the agenda I would be covering as a part of today's session. So just a bit of a context. Digital technology, as you are all aware, digital technology is a part of everyone's life. Let it be from internet banking to online shopping, businesses to government agencies, digital technology is very crucial. So according to one of the Ponimon report, which was released last year, the mobile penetration in Thailand alone is about 140%, and the internet penetration is about 50%. So this essentially means data that goes to the digital platform. And countries actually have realized the importance of having, privacy laws in order to protect the citizens' data. And if you see this chart, basically, so 128 countries across the world have a domestic or a regional data privacy law. And some are very comprehensive, like GDPR. Some are actually in enforcement, in the process of enforcement, like how it's happening with Thailand data protection. And some countries do not have a stringent law. So moving on, I want to just give you an overview for everybody's benefit. What is the Thailand Data Protection Act? So if you see, it was with the same intent, actually, like the global laws. Thailand also came up with a privacy law in order to protect their citizens' data. Now, who does TDPA or Thailand Data Protection applies to? Thailand Data Protection applies to organizations that are within Thailand processing personal details of data subjects for providing goods and services. Now there is a slight bit of addition to other laws like GDPR. This has an extraterritorial effect or extraterritorial applicability. What it essentially means is that if I am an organization which is outside Thailand, but I'm actually collecting Thai citizens' data outside Thailand and providing goods and services to them, then also Thailand data protection law is applicable. So it's not only for organizations within Thailand, but also outside Thailand, but processing Thai citizens' personal details. Now, the timelines for adoption was initially given as 1 year. So it came into effect last year, May 2019, and organizations were given 1 year initially. But with the given COVID situation, based on the proposal from the Ministry of Digital Economy and Society, there has been an extension of 1 more year for the implementation for organizations. So the revised timelines would be 31st May 2021. Now, I'm sure you all must be aware, the penalties for non-compliance, like any other law, the financial penalties might not be huge. It's 5 million Thai baht, but there are certain violations which could lead to 1 year of imprisonment for the executives. So in case of some criminal charges, it could be a combination of both, 5 million Thai baht or the. So there are certain exemptions which are given within the law. So in case of public interest or ethical standards or certain government agencies and members of parliament and judiciary, they could be exempted actually from the law itself. So this in a nutshell is what the Thailand Data Protection Act says. So before I get into the key highlights of the law itself, so it's very important we understand what are all the who are all the key stakeholders within the privacy ecosystem, right? So there are 4 key stakeholders according or based on our experience we have seen. So there's a data subject whose personal data you would be handling. And I'll clarify once more, privacy or Thailand Data Protection Act is applicable in case you're handling personally identifiable information of individuals. What I mean by that is, say, for example, as a part of your services, if you're collecting name, telephone number, address of the people, so it is personally identifiable information. You can identify an individual from that, right? So data subject is basically whose data you collect. In your business context, could be a customer data. Data controller could essentially be you, a CAT Telecom, who kind of collects the data to provide goods and services to their customers. In case you decide to outsource some work to a third party or a external organization, so they become data processors because they process the data based on your instructions. Actually. So in this case, processors or anybody else whom you outsource the work to could be third, data processors. And in case if the data processors decide to outsource the work further, then they become the third parties, right? So in that case, actually, the data processors need to keep the data controllers informed that they are going to further outsource the work, and it could potentially have personally identifiable information. So this is the typical privacy ecosystem. So I'll go to the key highlights, for everybody's benefit. So I'll quickly cover this. So I've categorized into, 5 buckets. Basically, the first one is on data subject rights, a very important aspect and very important aspect probably for any business. So what it essentially says there is that, the data subject has the right to access their data at any given point in time, can restrict the data being used, can request for an erasure of their data, or object the data being transferred or used. Port your data. Say, for example, if they want to use a different service provider other than CAT, they can request to port their existing data to the new service provider, okay, and keep the data up to date. The second aspect is that they can give or withdraw consent at any given point in time. Essentially, they can say that, hey, stop using my data. So that's called as withdrawal of their consent. Can restrict the use once the purpose is over. So if they don't see a need why you should be handling their data, they can tell you to stop using their data. However, if there is a legal requirement for CAT Telecom or you to retain the data for legal purposes, then you can retain the data. So the response time, if a data subject requests for their data, the response time would be 30 days as per the law. And in case access is denied to the data subject for some reason, you need to clearly document why the access was denied, and data should be accurate, up to date, and should not be misleading. So this is the rights what the data subjects has over their data as per the Thailand Data Protection Act. Now, as I spoke, the scope is widened or broadened actually because there is an extraterritorial applicability. Data controllers and data processors are equally liable for the breaches if there is a breach within the organization. And some exemptions are given as per the law, as I covered earlier. And the third aspect is the organizational impact, again, which is a very key point. There is, like GDPR, there's a requirement to breach within 72 hours once you have identified the breach. And data controllers are bound to validate. So if you're outsourcing some work to a data processor or another organization, you are bound to validate the controls, what they have implemented. Basically, you need to have a good due diligence process to onboard a vendor and also have a good vendor risk management program. Data protection officer has to be appointed, and you have to have security and privacy go hand in hand, actually, right? So again, as per the privacy law, security is one of the very key aspects, and you need to have a robust cybersecurity program to address all these applications. And cross-border data transfer, if you are moving the data outside of Thailand, you need to ensure that there is adequate level of protection even in the country which you are transferring it to, or they need to be governed by a policy or a company policy. A very important aspect. So consent has to be freely given by the data subjects. It cannot be forced consent. Clear to provide a notice if you're collecting the data, why you're collecting it, where you're going to store the data. All those details has to be disclosed to the data subject. Collection should be for a lawful purpose, and data controller should not collect data from a third party, actually. And if you are collecting data from a third party, then you need to kind of intimate or obtain the data subject consent within 30 days. And explicit consent has to be obtained in case of a sensitive personal data, which could be your bank details or your health information, so forth. And the fifth aspect, as we spoke, the cost of compliance is going to be one of the factors, and fines up to 5 million Thai baht or 1 year imprisonment or both. And there would be a data privacy authority which would be overseeing all these activities once this comes into effect in 2021. Like how there is a European Data Protection Board for GDPR, there could be an authority within Thailand to be overseeing all these activities. So this is, in a nutshell, the key highlights of the law. Moving on. The stakeholders' concerns and challenges. So these are some, if you see the left-hand side of the presentation, or the slide, these are some of the concerns arise by the stakeholders within any organization. And the right-hand side speaks about what are the typical challenges, what we face with respect to data security and privacy. So let's take a few examples, actually. So at an executive level, you must be able to prove compliance with confidence, as ultimately the executives are responsible for the data within the organization, right? As a risk and compliance team, their concern would be how do they ensure that there is a visibility of data across the organization. Okay, and let me take what type of data, right? So structured data and unstructured data within the organization. So structured data could be the data within your databases, and the unstructured data could be the ones which are like, the files, the PPT, the Word documents in the shared folders could be unstructured data. And unstructured data, trust me, is the biggest risk for organizations actually. And as an IT manager, your concern could be, you need to secure the data across both the structured and unstructured repositories, right? So these are some of the key concerns what we see for teams. And if you see on the right-hand side, actually, there are certain challenges that organizations face, irrespective of the industry. But these are the common challenges that organizations face actually when it comes to data security or privacy. So most of the organization don't know where to start, what their data assets are of high value, which lines of business is more critical to them, and which repositories and databases are used. The second point is very key here, right? So most of the organizations have control over the structured data, but when it comes to unstructured data, they don't have visibility of these unstructured data, right? So that is again key concerns which I've seen even in meeting companies in Thailand. Actually, most of the organizations have this as a concern. Actually, unstructured data visibility is a key concern. The third aspect is who can access the data, right? So with the COVID situation, the additional challenges what I see coming up is that where the people are accessing the data from and what devices are being used. Is it a corporate device which is being used, or a bring your own device actually concept which is being followed? So that is again the third concern. And what happens in case of a breach? What I've seen is most of the organization don't use their existing technology stack to the full effect. So because of which actually they might not be able to identify breaches within their environment. And the other aspect is actually once they identify the breach, how do they report that particular breach to the regulators and the data subject? The next aspect is compliance-driven strategy. What compliance issues they have within the organization, what controls they have in place in order to meet those compliance requirements. And most of the organizations, trust me, they don't have a full-fledged list of what their compliance requirements are also, right? So that is also another challenge. And as mentioned in the previous sessions, actually, right, data is ever growing. And you need to have practices in order to address all these ever-growing data. It might be transferred between different platforms actually. So your policies cannot be stagnant. You need to keep on updating those policies with the changing environment as well. And the last aspect is as you move to cloud, or most of the organization move to cloud, you need to understand what your responsibility is and what the cloud service provider's responsibility is, right? So data typically will be responsibility of some of the key challenges what we have seen with most of the organizations. And to be very pointed, needs to do with respect to data protection or data privacy. So this in a nutshell are the 8 items actually which most of the organization needs to focus on. The first item is actually defining a data protection framework. That essentially means that defining the organization structure, the roles, responsibilities, the policies, the processes in relation to data privacy or data protection. The second aspect, as we spoke, which is a key aspect, is getting visibility of your data. Essentially, know where your structured and unstructured data is within your organization. This could be through interviews, or this could be through even doing automated data discovery using tools. Then the third aspect is keeping the records of processing activities. So we need to create data flows, and this data flow is very specific to personal data flows. And we need to create a personal data inventory, and we need to do a data protection risk assessment or impact assessment in order to identify the risks. Now, why this is important, right, for organization to do this? Because in case tomorrow there is a breach, And if the regulators come and ask you actually, hey, what have you done? What are the controls you've implemented? Show me the records of processing. You need to show this as evidence to the regulators. And that is how we have seen with most of the regulations, actually, they do ask for records of processing. And I'm sure that Thailand authorities, when they come into picture as well, will be asking for records of processing. The fourth aspect is implementing appropriate security measures, to prevent loss or unauthorized access and alteration of or disclosure of personal data. Additionally, we need to look at an integrated approach. Whether your existing technologies are talking to each other. Say, for example, if you have a QRadar solution, if you have an incident response platform, and if you have a ticketing tool, does all these three talk together effectively in order to bring out the value, what you require? Data breach notification, have the right set of technologies and the processes in order to identify the breach and notify the breach within 72 hours, actually, as per the requirements. You might have the best of the technologies, you might have the best of the processes in place, but people could be your weakest link, actually. Now, if you are not imparting trainings, making them aware of the privacy laws or the requirements, again, it could be a weakest link, actually. So imparting training and awareness program is also equally important. And vendor governance. So as I told you, as per the law, the data controller or the organization is responsible for ensuring that the vendors, whomever they are kind of onboarding, have adequate level of controls in place. So you need to ensure that you have a strong due diligence program in place in order to assess the vendors. And for the existing vendors, you need to ensure that you make the existing vendors aware of their data privacy obligations. And the last one is the appointment of a data protection officer. Okay, so these are the key things that the organization needs to do in order to address the data privacy requirements of Thailand. And most of the organizations, once I present this slide, ask me where to begin with, actually, right? So the first step would be to understand and do an assessment of your environment or any organization. And this typically takes about 8 weeks, actually, but it all again depends on the scope of the activities what will be performed. So I'll move on. So how can IBM assist you, right? So we have a data privacy practice across the globe, okay? And our data privacy program helps clients more rapidly create and deploy a comprehensive privacy framework in order to address the different regulatory requirements. Now, we don't only stick to probably a Thailand Data Protection Act, but we bring in experiences of our implementations with other customers across industries or the same industry in the other regions, right, geographies as well. So the objective of our program is to protect the brand image and reputation of the organization, and to gain and maintain the customer confidence and or trust. We also ensure that you comply to the local regulations, and if there are any global regulations you need to comply to, we ensure that you comply to that and gain a competitive advantage in the market. I'm sure that once this comes into effect, and I've seen within the region or within Thailand itself, other telecom providers which have taken this initiative for having a data privacy program in place. Again, our feature of this program is that we are not only going to be your technology partner, we are going to be a consulting partner to you. We are going to advise what are all the areas within the organization needs to get involved. This is not only an IT department's job. This is a combination, or you need to build a bridge between business lines, legal, IT, compliance, actually, for this program. So a successful program only you'll be able to achieve only once you have stakeholders from different departments, actually, for this initiative. And again, we will be leveraging our security experts across various areas for this data privacy program as well. And you see on the right-hand side, these are some of the key deliverables or outcomes, which is provided as a part of our data privacy program. Yeah. Now, in order to have a successful data privacy program, you need to have a framework in place, right? So this is our framework, actually, what IBM proprietary framework we use. And again, it has 4 layers. It has a technology layer, it has a process layer, people layer, and the topmost governance layer. As I told you, this data privacy initiative within your organization, it's going to be a top-down, or it should be a top-down approach. And also there should be participation from different business units in order to make it a success. Now, executive involvement is also very important. And you need to have, first of all, a data privacy policy in place in order to run this program. And you need to have the right set of reportings in order to run the program. And from a people perspective, we will evaluate the skills. We will be defining the roles and responsibilities. We will be looking at staff capacity within your organization across various departments, and also provide training to all your employees. And from a process perspective, there's going to be formalized documentation that could be coming up with the data lifecycle, workflow automation wherever possible. And from a technology perspective, these are the indicative technologies actually, or areas of technologies where we will be assessing your existing controls. Now, this has to be done across the structured and unstructured data repository, and has to be done for on-prem and cloud solutions, right? So this is, in a nutshell, our framework. The proposed data privacy journey. So what we have done is, based on our experience, we have broken it down to 2 waves, so wave 1 and wave 2. So wave 1 is very essential to be executed in order to, or there are inputs from wave 1 that gets into wave 2 for us to be executed. So in wave 1, basically what we do is we understand the business, we kind of draw out the data flows within the organization, personal data flows within the organization, create an inventory of personal data that gives a visibility for the business, actually, what are all the personal details and what their obligations are. Now, in addition to that, we create a control framework, which basically will be used in order to assess against the Thailand Data Protection Regulation or Act. Now, in the gap assessment, basically, we will be seeing your existing practices in place with respect to data privacy and cybersecurity, and identify gaps with respect to the Thailand Data Protection Regulation. Now, these gaps is very essential for us to start the wave 2, where we will be creating a roadmap for your implementation. And during the implementation, we are not going to kind of propose only new solution, but we will be looking at your existing solution, see what are all the solutions which can address the privacy related use cases. And also, if required, we will be proposing for a new technology to address the privacy related risk. We also will be helping you roll out the policies and processes, and impart training to all your employees with respect to data privacy. Now, we don't stop there. We also provide ongoing operations and monitoring, where we help customers assess their operating effectiveness over a period of time. And also, we provide managed services to certain customers who are willing to continue with us. So this, the 2 waves actually, or the data privacy journey, which we propose to most of our customers. And the next slide is basically explanation of what I explained earlier, actually, or put earlier. So basically, we have 3 phases. We have the assess phase, the enablement phase, and monitoring and support phase. So the assess phase is where we will be conducting a gap assessment against the Thailand data protection requirements. We will understand the business. We will be documenting the different records of processing. And also, most of our organization ask us for performing automated data discovery. So we propose the right set of technology for doing the automated data discovery, and we also help them to run the discovery scans within their environment and produce a report. Now, this will give a visibility of what are the gaps, and will help us document the implementation roadmap. Now, the next phase is more on the enablement phase, and this is the beauty of IBM, right? So we don't only unlike other organizations, we don't only focus on the assessment, but we also help with the enablement and also help with the monitoring and support. So it's a end-to-end program which we help most of our customers with. So as I told you, in the implementation phase, we will be helping you build the privacy program, business plans, business budgets and roadmaps, and designing and implementing the solutions to address the key risks and non-compliance. Now, there are some differentiators in the market. So recently, there was a certification which was introduced by ISO, ISO 27701. Basically, a lot of organizations started asking that, hey, how do we prove compliance to the data privacy laws across the globe? And the ISO organization came up with a certification, ISO 27701. So basically, if you are ISO 27001, you have an information security management system in place already, you're certified ISO 27001, you can get this as an additional requirement and comply to the data privacy requirements as well. So we help a lot of customers in this space as well. And monitoring and support, as I told you, we help in checking the operating effectiveness once we do the implementation. And also we provide managed security services with respect to, say, SOC or related to, data protection, having a database access monitoring solution, activity monitoring solution, so forth. So this, in a nutshell, is our approach for the organizational data privacy. Very important slide, and this essentially says what are all the key risk areas when it comes to privacy and what is our indicative solution towards that. As I told you, there are multiple risk areas when it comes to privacy, and security is just one amongst that. And what are all the indicative solutions in order to address those key risk areas? Let me take an example. So if you see number 2, how can I obtain visibility of personal information within my environment? So if you want to do a data discovery, automated data discovery, these are the different technologies we have in the area of data discovery. It could be an IBM Guardian solution, or it could be Stored IQ solution. But the best part about IBM security is that we are vendor agnostic. So in case if the customer wants us to consider non-IBM products as well, we do kind of consider that. So that's what you could see in this particular slide. And also, like, say, for example, there are certain areas, where IBM might not have a capability or a product, and that is where we bring in solutions or OEMs from outside. Like, say, for example, IBM doesn't have a capability when it comes to data loss prevention, and we have implemented data loss prevention solutions for multiple customers. And it is not the technology implementation which we did, but also the consulting exercise, which is an important catalyst for the technology implementation. Right. So this, in a nutshell, are the key risk areas and the indicative solutions actually when it comes to data privacy. Now, one of the asks which was told to me was that it is not only for CAT Telecom to achieve compliance to the Thailand data protection, but we also want to provide services to customers actually, or CAT customers around data privacy. So what I did is actually I've come up with the indicative areas to collaborate, basically, right? So this is based on our experience working with other organizations in the collaboration mode and giving services to their customers, right? So these are the 5 or 6 set of services what we can be providing to the customer, and it's a combination of consulting service and also the technology implementation. Say, for example, gap assessment and roadmap is a typical activity which most of the organizations want to do. They want to see what are the existing gaps within their environment, and then want to see what is the roadmap actually for implementation, right? Data discovery could be one of the data mapping, and data discovery could be one of the services which we could be providing actually to the customer. So what I've done is I've called out the services, I've called out the typical timelines for providing those services, what could be the scope actually for providing that service, and what will be the activities that will be performed during the services actually. Now, there are a lot of activities in this which could be run parallelly. So they are not dependent on each other. So there are a lot of activities which could be run parallelly, right? Say, for example, if an organization has a extensive actually team that does a lot of customization of applications within their organization, security and privacy by design assessment is something which they would be interested in, because the law clearly says that security and privacy should not be an afterthought. It should be incorporated right from the design phase itself. So these are some of the services where we could collaborate with you and provide our services to your customer. If you see, actually, you need to understand one aspect with respect to who are the key stakeholders when it comes to privacy. So in an organization, typically the legal and compliance team, the business, the IT department, or information security could be the key stakeholders when it comes to privacy. So what I've done is actually listed down each of the areas and listed the responsibilities against each of these areas. So if you see, the legal and compliance team could be the buyers within the organization for data privacy, followed by the business, IT, and information security. Some organizations do have a chief data privacy officer in place, and in that case, they could be one of the key stakeholders for positioning privacy. Now, this is a typical operating model, what we propose for organization when it comes to data privacy. So we need to have the data privacy governance in place. There should be an organization policy that drives the privacy initiative. And again, as I told you, it's a combination of different teams, compliance, legal, and risk, actually, which needs to be a part of this initiative. And there should be the ones below are the key focus areas when it comes to data privacy initiatives. And your supporting technology should consider privacy use cases as well. You cannot be only running the security related use cases, but also privacy related use cases. And this should be done across structured and unstructured data and on-prem and cloud solutions. I will quickly, in the paucity of time, because I have some of our experiences with large telecom providers across the globe of taking up data protection initiatives. But in the paucity of time, I'll just move to way forward. So what I believe is, as Cat Telecom actually, we need to first of all comply to the Thailand data protection requirements before you provide services to your customers, right? So first question your customers could be asking is how do you comply to the Thailand data protection regulation? So that should be the first milestone, and the second milestone would be to have a short-term and a long-term plan, which is around bundling the right set of services around data privacy and cybersecurity, having joint thought leadership between CAT and IBM, publish some white papers and point of view on Thailand data protection regulation, and come up with a list of clients or focus clients actually, where we could be running some workshops together. Again, the long-term goal would be to do joint marketing, have a go-to-market strategy, and also doing marketing, which is by conducting events, conference jointly. So I think this is, in a nutshell, the way forward for providing data privacy services to your customers. Vibun, back to you.
Okay, thank you. ไม่ทราบมีคำถามอะไรไหมครับดร.กันมีคำถามอะไรไหมครับ
ไม่มีครับละเอียดดีมากเลยฮะ
ละเอียดดีมากนะโอเค
ครับ
จากหัวข้อทั้งหมดนี้ดร.กันอยากจะให้มีเรื่องไหนที่อยากจะเอาดึงขึ้นมาคุยต่อในอะไรอีกทีหนึ่งในเซสชั่นถัดๆไปอะครับ
เดี๋ยวผมขอคุยกับทีมก่อนได้ไหมฮะก็มีหลายเรื่องน่าสนใจนะฮะแต่เดี๋ยวผมยังไงเดี๋ยวผมขอคุยกับทีมแล้วเดี๋ยวผมติดต่อกลับแล้วกันครับ
ได้ครับได้โอเค
เดี๋ยวรบกวนขอถามครับ
ครับ
Hi, Sunil. Thank you for a very informative information on the DPA.
Sure.
My name is Sid from the operation team. I agree with you that the DPA is a very important thing, and we are trying our best to protect the data according to the law. We have several ISO implementation in our organization, also in our data center. But however, could you give me an example of a company in Thailand that have been sued by this DPA?
Not yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because most of the time I have only seen individuals that have been sued by this particular law.
Right. So that's a good question. So with respect to the enforcement, right? Still, the law has not been completely enforced because we do have some timelines actually with respect to the implementation. So the revised timeline as per the recommendation of MDES is next year, 2021 May. So we do have 1 year of timelines actually. So in the meantime, I'm not sure what will be the law which will be governing any breach. But the fact is that PDPA will be applicable, or the organizations or entities will be sued, or a complaint can be raised once it comes into effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for the answer. And one more question. Can you give the example of the company that you have been working with, like the global telecom, and
Right.
your service and be able to comply with those country?
Right. So this is a large telecom service provider back in India. Actually, it is the largest telecom service provider. So as a part of complying to the various regulatory requirements, they wanted to protect the data within their organization. Now, this was not only specific to personal data, but also sensitive data across their organization. So what we did was actually we partnered with this telecom service provider, I think who has 300 million plus customers or consumers at this point in time. And we helped them implement a data loss prevention solution. Right. So we actually took Symantec as the solution for data loss prevention. And we not only actually went and implemented the solution, but we also did a consulting service actually, right? So we started by understanding what their business is, what are all the critical data they handle within their business units, what are the top 5 documents which the business unit uses, and who are the people who access those details. So all these items we kind of gathered as a part of our consulting exercise. We built a data taxonomy, okay, for the organization. So each of the business units, what critical data they could be handling, we built a taxonomy around that. So what we did was we took this as an input to the DLP implementation. So typically what organizations do is they procure a DLP solution, they just implement the default policies, they move forward, but they don't see the real value out of it. But when you do the consulting exercise, you understand what are all the critical data within your organization, and you can fine tune the policies. So we kind of did the consulting exercise, we implemented the solution on ground for about 35,000 users within the organization. And we kind of fine-tuned the policies, what are there. We wrote the patterns, we used the machine learning capabilities of the Symantec DLP and kind of implemented it on ground. Now, after implementing the DLP solution, we monitored the user activities for almost like 6 months in order to see what is the typical user behavior with respect to handling a particular data or sending the data outside the organization. Once we had that, actually, we could propose for more stringent policies, and we went in the blocking mode. Now, this is the implementation we did with one of the largest telecom service provider back in India, and this was done as a part of the regulatory.
Thank you so much for the information.
Okay, Sunil. Hello, Sunil, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, actually, there's one more question from Kun Thirayut in the chat box. So, do you have any recommendation or checklist items which
Yes.
you saw that? You saw the question?
Yes, I saw that, and typically what happens is actually as a part of your vendor management program, we look at what are all the security and privacy aspects you cover as a part of your contract, okay, or whether you do a due diligence. I think he's referring more to the due diligence checklist, so that that due diligence checklist can be run past actually the different vendors outside of Thailand in order to ensure compliance to Thailand data protection regulation. Yes, we can do that. Yes.
We do that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. มีคำถามอะไรเพิ่มเติมอีกไหมครับครับดร.กันมีอะไรเพิ่มเติมอีกไหมครับ
ไม่มีแล้วครับ
ยังไม่มีนะฮะโอเค
ครับ
แค่นั้นก็ต้องขอบคุณมากๆนะครับเดี๋ยวสไลด์ที่ใช้ในวันนี้เดี๋ยวจะทำเป็น PDF แล้วก็ส่งไปให้กับทางดร.กันแล้วก็ทางทีมนะครับแล้วก็หลายๆอันถ้าเกิดว่ามีส่วนไหนที่ต้องการรายละเอียดเพิ่มเติมนะครับเดี๋ยวจัดเซสชั่นแล้วก็เข้าไปเล่ากันอีกทีหนึ่งได้นะครับ
ครับขอบคุณมากครับ
โอเคขอบคุณนะครับ
ครับ Thank you very much Sunil
Yep so thank you Christine thank you Sunil
Pleasure
Alright ขอบคุณครับดร.กันแล้วก็ทางทีมแคท
Thank you
ขอบคุณครับขอบคุณมากครับ
ขอบคุณครับสวัสดีครับ
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Sunil.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.